Hi everyone. Today we're going to take a look at volume and surface area of some of our shapes. We're going to take a look at some more shapes next time, looking at volume and surface area as well. But we're going to look specifically at prisms and cylinders today. And the shapes that we're going to be looking at have a base. The base on the bottom and the top are the same size and shape, which means they're congruent. And between those sides, we have parallelograms in the case of a prism. And so all of the volumes that we're going to look at in this case, and remember, volume is the amount of space an object occupies. So what would it take to fill the object, and is measured in cubic units. So we can take the area of the base, whatever the base is, a circle, a rectangle, a triangle, we can find the area of the base and then multiply by the height, basically to fill in that object as we go. For surface area, we're talking about the outside of the object. So what would it take to cover an object? And because we're talking about 3D, we need to account for all the sides. So we would find the area of all of our sides of our object and add them together. And because we're still talking about area, it's still calculated in square units. So taking a look at our formulas. When we are talking about the area, the volume, first of all, of a rectangular prism, remember we talked about the base times the height. Well, the base in this case, the area of the base, is just our length times our width of our rectangle. And we multiply that by the height, and that's our formula for volume. Area is equal to length times width times height. If we're talking about surface area, there are 6 different sides to this object. We have a top and a bottom that are the same. So we have 2 sides that are length times width. We have the sides, which are height times width, or width times height. We can write it either way. And 2 of those. And then we have our front and our back, which are our length times our height. So again, 2 times length times height. That's the area of our surface area of our rectangular prism. So if you ever forget the formula, you can come up with it. We have 6 different sides, 2, 2, and 2 to cover all of the sides. Our triangular prism, our volume, so our base here is a triangle. So to fill the object, we would take our base times our height divided by 2. That's our triangle. So that's our base times our height. In this case, we're going to use length for the height of the object because we've already used height for triangle. So base times height times length divided by 2. And we can multiply by length after the fact or before we divide by 2 as well. If we want to know the surface area, so calculating all the sides, we've got 2 triangles, so 2 base times height divided by 2. And we've got 3 sides, the bottom and our 2 sides, one on the other side here. And when we're going to calculate these, we want to add up those 3 sides. Notice that our slant is going to be the width of 2 of our sides here. So we're going to have 2 slant times length. Slant times length gives us the area of this rectangle. We multiply that by 2 because we've got the same over here. And our third side, which is the bottom here, is going to be our base times our length. Now, we can simplify that formula when we put it into a question because we know that 2 base times height times 2 then divided by 2, our 2's are going to cancel out. So we can either leave it like this, straightforward, or we can simplify by canceling out our 2's. The volume, and sorry I've been writing the wrong formulas here. We have volume for a cylinder is the area of the base, which is a circle. So pi r squared is the area of our base, and we multiply by height to fill that all in. For surface area, we know that we need our two circles, our top and our bottom circles, so we're going to have 2 pi r squared. And then we need the side area. And when we unfurl this circle, that would just be the circumference of this circle, which is now going to be the width of the sides if we pulled it out, making it flat. So circumference of a circle is 2 pi r multiplied by the height to get our surface area of the outsides. So using those formulas, we want to calculate the volume and surface area of the following objects. So volume is pretty straightforward. Volume of our cylinder is going to be 2 pi r squared times height. Subbing in what we know. Our radius, note we have to divide that by 2. So radius is going to be 5 meters. So we're going to have 5 squared times 10. Now, again, we want to make sure that when we're doing these calculations that the only part of this that's squared is the 5. So we're going to put in here our 5 first, and 5 squared, because we're multiplying by everything else, we're just going to take 5 squared times 10 times 2 times pi, and when we do that, we get 1,256.6 cubic meters. Now, our surface area, starting with our formula, we're going to have 2 pi r squared, our two circles, plus 2 pi r height. Again, subbing those numbers in, the same numbers. This time we have our height of 16. And simplifying, our first part is going to be 157.08. Last part, 502.65. And when we add those numbers together, we get 659.7 square meters. Again, area, square units. Now, for our triangular prism, we know that we're going to need this slant measurement. Notice that we don't have our slant, but what we do have is a right angle triangle, half of the front or the base. So we can use Pythagorean theorem to find out what the slant is. And the slant is the hypotenuse in our triangle. So we're going to have slant squared equals 6 squared. Notice on the bottom here, we're going to divide the 8 by 2 because it's only half of the total base of our triangle. So we're going to have 36 plus 4 squared is 16, and we're going to take our 52 and square root it. Now we're going to keep some extra decimal places here because we know we need to use this in the next step. So we're still rounding, but we're going to keep a few decimal places at least to sub into our solutions. So volume, first of all, is our base times height times length divided by 2. So our base is 8. The height of our triangle is 6. And the length of our object is 14. When we sub that into the calculator, we get 336 cubic inches. So we don't have to get any fractions or anything because we don't have any parts of inches. And finally, our surface area, we have our 2 times base divided by 2, our two triangles. Our two sides are 2 times slant times length. and our bottom is base times height. Again, we can cancel out the multiply by 2 and divided by 2 and simplify that. So we're going to have 8 times 6 plus 2 times 7.211 times 14 plus 8 times 14. And again, we can do this all in our calculator in one big step. 8 times 6 plus bracket 2 times 7.211 times 14 end bracket plus bracket 8 times 14. And when we do that, we get 361.9. We notice that we're using square inches, which means we're going to change this into a fraction. And our answer is 361 9/10 square inches. Number 2, a large rectangular sandbox is going to be built at a recreational facility. So we're going to have 20 feet by 30 feet, and it's going to be 1.5 feet deep. So we want to know the cubic yards of sand. So we're talking about volume, and it makes sense, sand to fill the sandbox. So volume of a rectangular prism is length times width times height. And also notice that we have all of our measurements in feet. It's asking us in cubic yards. So they sell sand in cubic yards. So we're going to do our calculations here. We've got 30 times 20 times, and we're going to change 1.5 to 1.5. It's still exact, and we can just put that into our calculator more easily. So when we find out, we get 900 feet cubed. Now, we need this in cubic yards. Like we talked about last day with our area, we have to account for the fact that it's not just feet to yards. We are doing cubic units. So when we talked about doing area, we squared our conversion. Because we're talking about cubic units, we now have to cube our conversion. So both sides get cubed. So 3 times 3 times 3 means we have 27 cubic feet is equal to 1 cubic yard. And now we can use what we know. We know we have 900 cubic feet. We want to know what it is in cubic yards. So we do our cross multiplication. 27x equals 900. So x equals 900 divided by 27, which means that we get 33 and 3 repeater. So 33 1/3 cubic yards. Again, we need to change this to a fraction. Remember that 0.33333 is just 1/3. If we don't remember that, we can make it 3/10. But we know that 33 1/3 cubic yards of sand are required or are needed. Number 4, a building is a rectangular prism with base measuring 15 yards by 12 yards and a height of 4 yards. The exterior is going to be covered by a stucco-like material, which costs $250 per square foot installed. We're going to ignore the doors and windows. We want to figure out how much this is going to cost. Well, remember, this isn't to fill the building. This is to cover the outside of the building. So we're going to be talking about surface area. Now, we look at our surface area formula. We're going to have 2 length times width plus 2 length times height plus 2 width times height. Now, if we think about our building, obviously the bottom cannot be stuccoed. We are not going to go under the building to stucco it. So we want to think about what part of this formula is taken out of here. And that's going to be one of our length times widths. So the measurement on the bottom we can take out of there because we're only going to do 5 sides of this object. So when we sub in our numbers, we're going to have 15 times 12 plus 2 times 15 times 4 plus 2 times 12 times 4. And when we do our calculations, we have 180 plus 120 plus 96 means that we have 396 square yards. No decimals to change into fractions. But now notice that when we look to see, it costs $250 per square foot. If we don't change this to square feet, our number is going to be way off. So we're going to start. We have 3 feet is equal to 1 yard. We're talking square units. So we're going to square our conversion, which means we're starting with 9 square feet is equal to 1 square yard. And we know that we have 396 square yards. We want to know what it is in square feet. Cross multiplying, 396 times 9 gives us 3,564. And x times 1 is just x. So we therefore have our answer. We know that we have 3,564 square feet. So now we can calculate our cost. So 3,564 times $2.50 per square foot. We know that we're going to have 8,910, and we need a therefore statement. It would cost $8,910. Okay, so we really want to think about our units. If we need to convert, think about, are we going directly? Do we have to square? Do we have to cube before we do it? And keep all of those things in mind as you're calculating. Okay, so some questions to practice on your work.